Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
Welcome to the broadcast, everyone. I call this obstruction of justice and destruction of evidence. I'm not going to get into the heavy politics of this, but the director of the FBI authorized in an email investigation of the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, authorized the destruction of evidence. I'm going to lay that case out for you today. Destroying evidence where they didn't even look at the evidence related to the email scandal after a particular date, the date on which public knowledge of the private server became public. So that's number one. Number two, they then allowed the witnesses to actually destroy the evidence. This is a question of the rule of law and the justice system. It's serious. By the way, to show you that it's not political, sure, the investigations are surrounding the former Secretary of State, Democrat, Hillary Clinton, but James Comey is identified as a Republican, and he's the director of the FBI. We now know that the secret side deals, which are not only unusual but unprecedented, and Representative Goodlatte, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, has been on top of this, has offered immunity now to 5 individuals by the FBI. That immunity also required that the either FBI or the witnesses themselves have the ability to destroy the laptops after they're reviewed by the FBI, and the FBI could review no emails after January 31st, 2015, which means the FBI couldn't see what the aides did or said after news of Hillary Clinton's private server became public in March of 2015. James Comey did not ask for a grand jury, saying it would have taken too long. That's a false statement, number one. Number two, what you've got with these kind of grants of immunity, not only was it impossible to prosecute anybody responsible for this unbelievable dereliction of duty, but the FBI director is now complicit in the obstruction of justice and the destruction of evidence. Without the threat of a grand jury, and that's what you have here, no threat of a grand jury, the Clinton team had all the leverage and were able to get this unprecedented deal in a criminal case. Now juxtapose this against Bob McDonnell, the former governor of Virginia, who, by the way, gets vindicated by the Supreme Court in an 8-0 decision. But the Justice Department, under Barack Obama, tried to put him in jail and his wife with ambush interviews, unbelievable subpoena power, grand juries impaneled. But Hillary Clinton gets a pass, and the director of the FBI is part of this. We've got a lot more ahead on this, and we're being very clear. We think this has reached the point where the head of the FBI needs to either resign or be impeached. You can go to ACLJ.org and sign that petition now, or call us at 1-877-989-2255. That's ACLJ.org or 877-989-2255. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
FBI Director James Comey has broken the sacred trust of the American people. He conducted a faux investigation into the State Department email scandal. He handed out immunity to protect the Clinton team from prosecution. He put President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton's political legacy ahead of the law. He made secret deals to destroy evidence, thwarting congressional subpoenas. That's called obstruction of justice, and it's a crime. President Obama's FBI director violated the law. He violated his oath of office. It's corruption at the highest level, and it's time for the FBI director to go. Stand with the American Center for Law and Justice. We're calling on Congress to impeach Director Comey. Add your name to our new petition, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or you can add your name online, aclj.org.
We've been really looking at this case, folks, as our lawyers here at the ACLJ, and I was in a meeting this morning, and I've taken this from the viewpoint of that James Comey goes from resignation to, if he doesn't resign, he should be impeached, and here's why. Obstruction of justice and the destruction of evidence, the willful destruction of evidence, are both high crimes and certainly misdemeanors, or felonies, actually. Under Article 2, Section 4, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. James Comey did not impanel a grand jury here. Well, that's malfeasance, number one. Number two, he granted immunity deals that had side deals. Those side deals included the ability to only go through January 31st of 2015, which, of course, is the date upon which the FBI could not see information after the private email server becomes public. And then with an FBI investigation supposedly going on, Congress has outstanding subpoenas. And what happens? With the outstanding subpoenas, the ability to destroy the evidence for the future. That's what we're talking about here. And either the FBI gets to destroy it or the individual gets to destroy it, the witnesses, who then get to be, as Jordan, as you mentioned, end up also becoming her lawyer.
Yeah,
now, this is unprecedented, but it's also, to me, this is it. This is an obstruction of justice and destruction of evidence by the FBI and the FBI director.
And both of them are attorneys. Cheryl
Yes.
Mills and Heather Samuelson are both attorneys. Heather Samuelson was actually the attorney that Cheryl Mills chose to look through Hillary Clinton's emails during this cycle. But the fact is, we know that they were allowed to, first of all, the FBI was only allowed to look at the emails. They agreed to this, by the way. It wasn't that they are the ones who said, okay, that's fine with us, till January of 2015. So there's no communication. They didn't get to look at any of the communication in March of 2015 when the fact that Hillary Clinton had set up this private email server became public. So the FBI decided on their own voluntarily to agree to this immunity deal and the side agreements that would say we're not even going to see what their discussions were back and forth when they were going to have to deal with this publicly, which would have been interesting as well.
Well, it could have been. It could be evidence in a crime. And not impaneling a grand jury here is absolute malfeasance. I mean, just absolute malfeasance. Now, Than, I want to go to you on this because you had an outstanding congressional warrant, basically, a congressional subpoena out. The evidence is now destroyed. That's according to the FBI's own agreement. They were too lazy to get it, and to get a subpoena. This is absurd, to impanel a grand jury, and so you have subpoena power. What's the reaction in Washington right now? Because I'll tell you my reaction as a lawyer who's been litigating for 36 years. This is absurd.
Yeah, well, it was a congressional subpoena and a preservation order for the very evidence that was destroyed to be preserved for Congress. Listen, this letter that you're talking about, Jay, it doesn't just come from Chairman Goodlatte, who brought us the initial news a couple of days ago. It comes from four chairmen, 3 in the House, 1 in the Senate. And by the way, both chairmen that would be responsible for impeachment hearings, Chairman Goodlatte in the House and then Senator Grassley, who wouldn't necessarily hold the hearings, but if there were impeachment proceedings to go forward, he would be in charge of those in the United States Senate. Listen, the FBI was covering their own tracks because the conversations that Jordan is talking about right now, those conversations would have been between Cheryl Mills and Paul Combata, the Platte River Network employee who used BleachBit on the servers. They would have occurred after March of 2015. Jay, the FBI immunized both Cheryl Mills and Paul Combata, and then they destroyed the evidence themselves.
So we've got the IRS commissioner under it, basically impeachment proceedings about to commence there. And I'm going to be actually on Bill O'Reilly's program this evening talking about this. And look, and now you got the FBI and they're complicit here. Logan, what are we hearing on the social media front? This is really outrageous.
Yeah, social media is just starting to come in. A lot of people ask, why is this such a big deal now? We've known this for the last few months.
Okay, so here's why it's reached this point. What we didn't know for the last few months, and Jordan and I have talked about this, what we didn't know for the last few months were all these side agreements. And it just came to light that Cheryl Mills was in the questioning of Hillary Clinton when she was, in fact, a witness, which is unprecedented as a lawyer. So the reason it's coming to light right now is we are just now getting the response to Congressman Goodlatte's request for information. The Wall Street Journal, interestingly, says, and this is, they say, their great guess is perhaps DOJ knew if they had a grand jury, it would leak, because the information does leak from grand juries, and damage Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. But the lack of a grand jury here, folks, is inexcusable. And now what has happened is beyond that. Jordan?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so we also know that because of that, the no grand jury, even the threat of a grand jury, that, hey, we can discuss these immunity deals, but we're also going to impanel a grand jury to subpoena your laptops, and they can authorize that. And then, so if you don't agree with our immunity deal, which could have been much stricter, you could have granted some kind of immunity deals. I'm not sure you would do it to Cheryl Mills, for instance, the Secretary of State's Chief of Staff, but maybe some of the other lower-ranking officials that would have had the communication with Cheryl Mills. but they had no threat. So all of the leverage was in the Clinton team's court. They got to kind of decide for the FBI how far we'll go. And that is not how, I mean, think about how most Americans would respond if the FBI is coming after you for information, or if you've got, IRS coming after you for information. If you have government agencies come after you, you're concerned, you're nervous, even if you've done nothing wrong. These individuals, they were acting cavalier. I'd say cavalier. Not only that, I mean, they've got the leading candidate for president of the United States basically coming out of this unscathed legally. And now, politically, we'll have to see, but legally unscathed.
But look, don't forget that Bill Clinton walked on that airplane with Loretta Lynch, and we got a FOIA request in on that whole conversation right now. And I'm holding another copy of a lawsuit we filed yesterday against the State Department on some of the other shenanigans going on in the State Department. By the way, we've also alleged in this complaint that the State Department is willfully, by policy and practice, not responding under the Freedom of Information Act, which is a federal law that they're violating. So that lawsuit has been filed. But you got to put this in the total context. So, Logan, back to the person's question, the reason we're dealing with it now is it's now just coming to light. This came up, by the way, with Ben Sass when he was questioning about the lack of a grand jury to James Comey. This was just from about a week ago. Here it is.
Do you think that Cheryl Mills would have destroyed her laptop? And if so, why this negotiation as opposed to just asking for it by grand jury subpoena?
Well, it's a lawyer's laptop. So having done this for many, many years, a grand jury subpoena for a lawyer's laptop would likely entangle us in litigation over privilege for a very long time. And so by June of this year, I wanted that laptop. Our investigators wanted that laptop, and the best way to get it was through negotiation. 3
false statements. Number 1, because there was confidential communications on there, classified information on that computer, under federal law, that computer then becomes the government's computer. So you don't need a subpoena to get it. That may make that crystal clear again. Because there was confidential and classified information on that computer, it is no longer the individual's computer. That's number 1. Number 2, it does not take long to impanel a grand jury. A grand jury should have been impaneled the moment this investigation started, and then you would have had subpoena power. Number 3, James Comey, really? You gave everybody that was a witness immunity and ended up prosecuting no one. So you're the one engaged in the obstruction of justice, in my view, and the destruction of evidence. You allowed that to happen. This is unprecedented. It's ridiculous. It's an outrage. And the American people deserve better. And our justice system is becoming a mockery with all of this. Let's go ahead and take a phone call, Logan.
All right, moving on. Let's go to Donald, who is calling from Kansas.
Hey, Donald.
I think what we need to do really is give Comey immunity for information leading to the arrest of Hillary Clinton.
Here's the problem, though. They've closed the case, Donald, against Hillary Clinton. So, and the evidence is gone. I mean, as far as we know, this evidence, Jordan, is destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, what are we giving him immunity for at this point?
Right.
Because what information would he even have access to? I think, honestly, the best thing that could happen to set a clear precedent for the future, one that this won't happen again, kind of like how we've been handling with the IRS situation, is that people like Jim Comey need to lose their job, which will affect their life forever. No more board memberships on the HSBC and big Swiss banks, because he's going to be an official that's marked with scandal. They need to understand that people like the Clintons, they will utilize you. People like the Obama administration, they'll use those individuals and part of the government agencies, but they are not going to save you long term. And ultimately, their careers will come to a close. They have to have some consequence here. And I think the removal of Jim Comey, whether it's by him having to resign because of pressure or ultimately being impeached, it sets a good precedent for the future that if you pull these kind of actions on any kind of high-ranking government officials, you will not have a career in the future. I think that is important, is that these government officials, they work for us. We pay their salaries.
They got to be reminded
so they should be accountable to us, the American people.
All right, Logan, we have time for another comment?
I didn't get a comment, not a call yet, but a lot of calls are coming in. This is a comment that came in from Periscope, actually. Ariel said on Periscope, is surprised they aren't blaming Russia for the destruction of these laptops.
Yeah. Folks, I want to be clear here. This is a question of the rule of law. The subject of the investigation is a Democrat. The person conducting the investigation is a Republican. And in my view, the Republican who's in charge of this, James Comey, the head of the FBI, derelict his duties. He should have done a real investigation here and not allowed for the willful destruction of evidence, which leads to, of course, obstruction of justice. So we think so this is not political. This is a question of our constitutional republic. If you want to stand with us in this fight on Capitol Hill and join members of Congress that have had it with this ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255 to sign that petition calling for the resignation or impeachment of the FBI Director, James Comey. Back with more in a moment.
FBI Director James Comey has broken the sacred trust of the American people. He conducted a faux investigation into the State Department email scandal. He handed out immunity to protect the Clinton team from prosecution. He put President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton's political legacy ahead of the law. He made secret deals to destroy evidence, thwarting congressional subpoenas. That's called obstruction of justice, and it's a crime. President Obama's FBI director violated the law. He violated his oath of office. It's corruption at the highest level, and it's time for the FBI director to go. Stand with the American Center for Law and Justice. We're calling on Congress to impeach Director Comey. Add your name to our new petition, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or you can add your name online, ACLJ.org.
I want to be very clear what we've been talking about. Welcome back to the program, everyone. And that is the rule of law has been violated. You've got an investigation that took place where side deals, it's unprecedented, immunity given. Well, that happens. They'll give immunity to witnesses in cases. But these side deals where it allowed the witnesses to then destroy the evidence under the FBI's purview. And that happens while a congressional subpoena is outstanding. There is no historical precedent for this. This is a violation of the rule of law, a violation of the Constitution, and a violation of the oath of office that the FBI director takes. We've got a lot to cover here, Logan, so let's go right to it.
Yeah, let's go straight to the phones. Let's go to Ken in Illinois.
Hi, Ken.
Hey, Jay, how you doing? Awesome job.
Thanks.
Hey, question. If they this is a conspiracy, which it obviously is, can't they pull back the immunity? Even with something like a RICO Act or something?
Yeah, so you bring up a really good question. Is the immunity reversible? And generally, a grant of immunity is not. You can't pull a grant of immunity back. And you got the complicating factor here, Ken, that they have destroyed the evidence. I mean, and they gave the authority. Understand this. They were investigating a crime that in large part took place after January 31st, 2015. And they investigated by saying, we're not going to look at any evidence after January 30th, 2015. And then Comey says there's no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute. Of course, if there's no evidence that you looked at the time of the crime. So this whole thing was manufactured. But once an immunity deal is granted, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak.
Now, that would set also a bad precedent for real immunity deals and legitimate immunity deals. Yep. So if you start pulling them back, then
that's why
this
is such a horrible travesty of justice.
That is the problem here, is that ultimately the people you can now hold accountable are those who granted the immunity, like Jim Comey,
right. Exactly.
And maybe other high-ranking Department of Justice officials as well. But ultimately, it rests with him. If he was an honest broker and under maybe this pressure from Attorney General Lynch and Obama administration,
he should resign.
He could have just resigned.
That
would have. A lot of people say, he's trying to send a message by that long statement. The message that would have been the clearest is, I'm resigning. And he could have then very freely said, because I don't like the way they were treating this investigation and the pressure that I was under. Yep. That, I think, would have, his credibility would have been clear for many, many years to come.
It's an outrage. Let me go to Sal, who's calling from New York City on line 6. Sal, welcome to the broadcast. You are on the air.
Hey, Jay, how are you today?
Good.
I appreciate all the work that
Sure.
you're doing. We also tried to get the IRS commissioner impeached. That didn't go nowhere.
That's not over. That's not over yet. Sal, that one's not over yet.
Okay, understood. But I mean, with all the corruption that's going on, and with everything with these Democrats, they're the ones that I watch C-SPAN all the time, and they're always off topic.
Yeah, but here's the thing with, and I'm not Democrats, Republicans. Supposedly Comey's a Republican. That's what they say. So here's the problem, and this is why we don't just talk about it on air. We go to court. We're going after these agencies. I mean, I'm holding the opinion where we beat the IRS. I told you that already. We beat the IRS in federal court. At the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. We beat the IRS. We're going after the State Department. And you can't just take this stuff lying down. You got to go after it.
No, and I do think that, regardless of their political backgrounds of any of these officials, and to be fair here, you have to treat them all the same. They can all be corrupted. I mean, at the end of the day, they are government officials who make kind of medium salaries for what they could, and they've cashed in. Jim Comey actually cashed in for a very short period of time on on his former government jobs. That's fine. I mean, so it wasn't illegal to do that. But then they get lured back into these government programs, higher positions. And then I think they say, okay, who am I going to try and please to get to the next level?
And that,
well, they look at the polls.
Hillary Clinton.
And they look at the polls and say, Hillary Clinton, he's not someone who just serves Republicans. He's not a Republican elected official.
Who do we have next, Logan?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go Teresa in Utah.
Hi, Teresa. You're on the air.
Hi. First off, I just want to, say a prayer for the people out in Florida. I've got some friends out there.
Yeah.
But my comment is more of a statement.
All right.
I've been watching Jay for quite a while, or listening to Jay for quite a while.
You're talking to me now. Go ahead.
It's like, all right, when are we going to see justice? I'm seeing talk.
Well, I'm holding in my now, Teresa. I'm holding in my hand, for instance, a copy of a U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. When we went after the IRS, and I'm letting our friends on Facebook and Periscope see it, and our radio audience, here it is, I'm holding it, and we beat the IRS. I mean, beat the federal government, beat the Justice Department for Barack Obama, and beat the Department of the Treasury Internal Revenue Service in federal court. So people are being held accountable. We filed briefs in the case involving the stacking of the LNRB and the immigration reform that President Obama tried to do without Congress, and we beat him back. So, look, I wish I could tell you, Teresa, this happens quickly. It doesn't. The evidence on this matter with Hillary Clinton has come out very slowly. They're not been responsive, but we are putting the case together. That's what we do as lawyers. The reason we're bringing it up today is now it is clear to me, and I said this to our team this morning, that it has reached past the point of this is unprecedented and ridiculous to the point of criminality. The destruction of evidence, the obstruction of justice. So what we're doing is, and I'll let Than jump right in here, work with Congress to move this forward and don't let this go. What's been pulled on the American people here is an outrage.
Well, that's why the temperature is changing on Capitol Hill when it comes to Director Comey as well. Because, listen, many of these members have personal relationship with him. They have liked him in the past. They have had respect for him. But what has changed here is they know that you have to have confidence in the FBI. Without confidence in the FBI, you can't pursue justice. And there is no confidence in the FBI right now. And on the Hill, Jay, here's the sentiment for why. Because now all of the evidence points to the fact that the FBI was not just covering tracks for Hillary Clinton. The FBI was covering tracks for itself. They were immunizing both sides of this deal, and they did not want those laptops searched after January because you know why?
And then you ask yourself, if that's the case, which I believe it is, Than, I'm going to ask this, and I know what I think the answer is. I'll ask this to Jordan too, though. Why in the world would they not want to go look at the emails after January 31st, 2015, which means the FBI didn't get to see what the aides did or said after news of the private email server became public in March of 2015? Why would they cut it off then?
They would cut it off then so that they didn't have to bring any charges against anybody, so we didn't get any kind of email exchanges between President Obama and Hillary Clinton. I think that, and also the fact is they got this limited review of even that time period. Right. And then said, after we're done with our limited review, you can destroy all of the data if you'd like. And so, of course, I'm sure they did destroy the data. They protected themselves from future prosecutions because understand, someone like Donald Trump could make the decision, may not, but could make the decision to come in as president. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be as high profile, but could instruct his new Department of Justice and Attorney General to open up the investigation.
But the evidence is gone.
But it's gone now.
Yeah. So
they've protected not just short-term, but long-term Hillary Clinton and her aides, whether or not she becomes the next president of the United States.
All right, let's go ahead and take another call, Logan.
All right, Karen in Omaha, Nebraska.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Jay. I just have a comment. As I understand that President Obama cleared his calendar so he could go out and campaign for Hillary. So my thing is that I'm not voting for Hillary. So why is my tax dollars being used for him to spend on campaigning for Hillary?
The campaign has to reimburse that. So the expenses of him coming are reimbursed by the campaign. So that's just the way, and that's worked for every administration. So, and Karen, you're not, so in that sense, you're not paying for it. Let's go ahead and take another call or comment, and then I want to ask a kind of question around the horn here.
Dennis said, I hope our next president will reopen and prosecute all involved. Peggy said anyone else would be facing life in prison.
And be certainly facing a long 20 years in prison.
And Will on Facebook asked, can Comey be impeached before the end of the year?
Okay, so Than, can Comey be impeached? Not likely because of just the way the timing is with the election, correct?
Well, it's going to take longer than that. But listen, unlike Commissioner Koskinen at the IRS, his term lasts till 2023, Jay. That's why beginning this process, it may take some time, but it should start immediately. It may take into next year, but we're talking about 7 more years of him if he's not removed or if he doesn't step down.
So this is it's a long time.
All right, let's go to Jack in Springfield, Illinois.
All right, Jack, go ahead. You're on.
Yeah, Jay, I would like to know, I've been a Christian for many years. I would just like to know, between these two candidates, who can you really, really trust?
I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm going to tell you to vote. You got to vote your conscience. You got to vote where you think it's right. Listen, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. There never is. But they have different views. We're trying to give you, look, we've been critical of Donald Trump on a lot of issues where we thought it was wrong and his policies weren't right or he wasn't prepared for something. So, we're trying to call it like we see it. But this thing is beyond politics, folks. I think the motivating force on this cover-up by the FBI is political. But what's happened legally is inexcusable. So I want to be really, really clear on that. I think we've got an opposed call, which is a good way to end the program today.
Let's go to JD in California.
Hey, JD.
Hi, Jay.
Hey.
Jay, I just want to know, is this just all about Democrats because that's all you talk about?
Well, James Comey's a Republican. James Comey, the FBI director, is a Republican.
Okay.
So I'm going after a Republican who is the head of the FBI.
Yeah, and honestly, when you've got this election, it's unique. But Hillary Clinton's got the long record of government service. When the caller goes to the issue of trust, with Donald Trump, I think it's a little bit more up in the air. People are going to have to make their own judgment on that. He does not have the long record of government service and all of the information that becomes public that comes with that. But I think it's all fair game, and we have to focus on all of the issues that matter. And for us, I think it's also that dangerous precedent it sets for the FBI to be able to give out immunity deals like this and play politics with the law.
Well, that's going to do it for the broadcast today, everyone. I want to encourage you to sign the petition right now. We think the rule of law is being violated here. It's, again, not political. You've got a Democratic person that's a subject of the investigation, and you've got a Republican that was leading it. James Comey, the director of the FBI, I think he's derelict in his duties. I think it's obstruction of justice, and I think it's destruction of evidence. I think the way to handle that is resignation or impeachment. ACLJ.org for that. That's ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. We'll see you next week.
FBI Director James Comey has broken the sacred trust of the American people. He conducted a faux investigation into the State Department email scandal. He handed out immunity to protect the Clinton team from prosecution. He put President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton's political legacy ahead of the law. He made secret deals to destroy evidence, thwarting congressional subpoenas. That's called obstruction of justice, and it's a crime. President Obama's FBI director violated the law. He violated his oath of office. It's corruption at the highest level, and it's time for the FBI director to go. Stand with the American Center for Law and Justice. We're calling on Congress to impeach Director Comey. Add your name to our new petition, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or you can add your name online, aclj.org.